Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Without further ado, please welcome the amazing Ian Harris to the show tonight. How are you tonight, Ian?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining our show tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And it's the extraordinary Ian Harris, by the way.
Extraordinary. I know, I got that wrong. I didn't want to steal too much from your show that you just released, but I thought, hey, I'll say amazing. It's a gimmick of the show. So, one of the big things, essentially, that I wanted to talk to you about, it's kind of amazing. I started doing some research. I kind of met you through. I saw an advertisement for the Reason Rally a couple years ago. And your name was on it, and I'm too poor to go to the Reason Rally, so we didn't go. But it was kind of funny because here you showed up in one of the podcasting groups, and I was like, hey, he has a comedy special, and then you start following you, and then I started doing some research, and come to find out you either own or you run an MMA fighting gym.
Yeah, yes, I own. I've run for many years, and now I own.
That's crazy. And I don't want to say that because I don't want to generalize and say all comedians are fat or lazy. But, you typically if you have to look at a stereotype, I don't see many comedians fighting in MMA.
It is funny, though. There's actually, funny enough, there's actually quite a few, and I was just talking about somebody the other day about this weird, there's kind of a weird, I don't know what the word is, symmetry or I don't know, coupling, I don't know what the word is, where between comedians and fighters, there's a lot of fighters that want to do stand-up, and there's quite a few comedians I know that are really into, whether they train or whether they just watch, that are really into fighting. Like there's Joe Rogan and Brian Callen and Adam Hunter, and there's Jamie Kilstein. There's just a whole bunch of comedians. Chris Strait. There's a whole bunch of comedians that are really into it. Russell Peters is really into boxing. It's very strange. It's very strange, and I think because they're so the kind of kindred spirits in a sense. Like when you're a comedian, you write, direct, produce, and perform. Everything. It's all 100% up to you, and you're on the stage by yourself for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
So, whereas it's the same thing with fighting. I mean, yeah, you have your team and you have your coaches and you have your teammates and all that, but you're in that ring or you're in that cage by yourself, and you ultimately have to perform, all the stuff that you've put together, and you have to deliver, and there's not much else you can do. You're doing it by yourself. You don't really get any help from anybody else. So I think there's kind of that similar spirit, I guess, of between fighters and comedians, believe it or not. But yeah, there aren't a lot of, you're not seeing too many ripped, comedians, or whatever. Not that I am, but you don't see that.
No, and I'm definitely not ripped myself, and I don't do comedy or fighting, but it was kind of neat, because again, when you go through people's lives, right, the whole point of having you on the show is to help promote your new special, your tour that you're doing, help promote a lot of what your stand-up is, but at the same time, if I don't get to know you, all you are is just another guy that tells jokes, maybe right. Jokes that fit my personality a little bit more, but you're just a guy that tells jokes. And then when you learn something like that, you did voiceovers, you've directed other comedy specials, and then all of a sudden, MMA Fighting Gym, and you designed your own special form of MMA fighting, and you're just like, holy crap. Like, that just kind of adds a layer that you just don't see all the time.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I definitely try to be more, have more layers to me, and I do what I enjoy doing for sure. I mean, I know for sure people definitely have it comes up a lot. People go, wait, so you do train fighters, and for a while I was doing that more than I was doing comedy. I had taken some time off comedy, like a few years, when I had my daughter, because I didn't want to be on the road full time. So I got pretty kind of well known as a fight trainer. Like I'm not like world fan. I'm not Greg Jackson or I'm not Customato or somebody like that. But I'm pretty well known. I've got guys in the highest levels and been doing it for a long time, and I've done seminars and all that kind of stuff. And I'm pretty well known. And when I got back to doing comedy, it's funny because every now and then people would come to me and they go, "Man, I know you from somewhere. Where do I know you from?" And I'd be like, "I don't know. I was on Jimmy Kimmel once," and they're like, No, did you see my special? They're like, "Nope, I've never seen you do comedy before. I would recognize your comedy. But no, I don't know where I know you from." And then finally, like a few times, she'll go, "Wait a second, did you corner so and so in a Bellator fight or a UFC fight?" I'd be like, "Oh yeah," and they'd be like, "What the hell are you doing comedy?" It's like the exact opposite. They'd know me, and I'm like, "Well, this is what I do," and they're like, "What?" So, yeah, it can be pretty funny sometimes when people recognize you from one thing and you're in the other world, Yeah.
And so a lot of your comedy, honestly, is you do a lot of science comedy. I noticed. I like your vaccine bits quite a bit, and your anti-woo-woo stuff. And some of that, maybe that's just personal, right? What do I laugh at? When I see things,
Right.
And so maybe it touches home. But you also do quite a bit of atheist or I don't know, secular comedy, I guess. Is that something that you've always done in your comedy sets, or is that something that you've just recently added in over, say, the last 8 years?
I think, it's mostly been since 2011, but I've always been a comic, and I've been a comic since I was 21, since like the day I was allowed to get on stage. I've been doing this pretty much for a living, and I've been a skeptic and an atheist since day one, since I was born. Like I've always been an atheist. I've never been anything but an atheist. So I've always done comedy that has some of that in there. Like I used to do a bit about ghosts, and I always had a couple jabs at religion, and it would be more though. I did a lot of stuff that was more palatable for the masses because I was not trying to hit a demographic or a group. I wasn't trying to do atheist comedy. I was just doing what I thought was funny. So I would do, I'd make fun of, Robert, what's his name, the old Tilton, or like these old televangelists. I would do jokes that, and those kind of things. And I make fun of the ghost shows, and I would do a lot of that kind of stuff. But it was more pop culture stuff than it was. And then I would add in my jabs about religion and this and that. But I took about 5 years off of doing comedy. I didn't want to be on the road at all, so I did no road work, which led to me not even going up on stage in LA because I was just like, didn't want to, what am I doing comedy for? I'm not on the road doing anything. And I was working at the gym, training fighters. I was, doing voiceover work, and I was doing all these other things. And when I came back to doing comedy in 2011, I came back to it because I said, God, I really miss comedy, and I just want to get back on stage. And I've got this daughter who's now, 5, 6 years old, and she doesn't know me as a comedian, and that's how I identify. So it was really weird to not be a comedian anymore and have a kid who doesn't know her dad is a comedian, and that's all I've done my entire adult life. So I got back into stand-up for that reason, but I didn't need to do it for a living, and I wasn't planning on going back out on the road full-time or anything like that. So when I went back up on stage, it was like, what makes me laugh? What do I think's funny? And I'm just going to talk about that, and if everybody hates it, who cares? I'm just talking for me. It's, and that's what I started doing is I just went back up on stage and started talking about religion and science stuff and skepticism and wacky things that people believe, and, knowing that, okay, I'm going to be in LA, and if I make fun of people who believe in astrology, I'll probably piss off half the crowd, and if I make fun of religion, I'll probably piss off the other half of the crowd, and, and not caring, and I'm just going to do what I do. And funny enough, I ended up being really prolific and writing, hours of material, more material than I'd ever written in my life, and just loving it. And I think that showed because all of a sudden I was getting fans and I was getting gigs and I was going back on the road, and and people were coming out to see me, and then, you know, I started kind of building this niche of atheist skeptic comic guy, and started doing all the things like the Reason rallies and the conferences and conventions, and all of a sudden people knowing me from that, you know, atheists and skeptics and science people knew me as one of the 3 comics that talk about those subjects, you know.
Yeah.
And it just became that, and it was like, wow, I should have been doing this back when I was 21. You know?
So, well, maybe, I don't know, you know, so you were 21, you had to have been like, what, 2000, 2001 or something like that? So
1992.
1992. Oh, okay, well, even, shit. Okay, so, that goes back even farther. You might have got even worse. Maybe they quarter you and draw you up by, you know, a noose at that point. I mean, for Christ's sake, that you got to think that's right. Well, even when the left was pretty Christian still. You know, I mean, in the 90s, early 90s, it was pretty uncommon to be an atheist, at least in our side of the world. Maybe in California, you know, liberal state it's not, but over here it's pretty uncommon.
Yeah, you know, I definitely don't think. I mean, I can't even get away with it now. The funny thing is, I do my own shows now. Like, so I will produce. I'll rent a theater and produce a show, and I'll advertise to, you know, market to all the skeptics and atheists in that city, and I'll go there and hope they turn out and see me. Or I'll go to a comedy club and say, hey, can we 4-wall this? Can we do a door deal? Can we do something on a Thursday night, on a Sunday night? And I do it that way because a lot of these comedy clubs that I used to work, you know, I mean, there were comedy clubs that I headlined for, you know, 3 weeks out of the year, which is, you know, I mean, I was a pretty good comic, not to like pat myself on the back, but I was a pretty good comic pretty early. So like I've had several clubs that are like, you're the fastest we've ever moved somebody up from MC to headliner, and we normally give people 1 week a year. You've got 3 weeks a year. Like, I mean, there was clubs that loved me that were just like, you can work here whenever you want. Those clubs now, I hit them up and they're like, yeah, we're not going to give you a week. And it's like, wait, but I used to work there all the time. They go, yeah, last time you were here, we got a lot of complaints about making fun of it's the religion or whatever. And they're like, but, you know, we'll give you one night and you can do your own show and bring your people out here. And we love that. That's cool. We support you, but we don't want to piss off 10 crowds a week. We'll give you one to get your people out. So it's funny. So even in this day and age, it's, I still have clubs that, you know, people that I've known for years that are skeptical, to use the word, about me performing for regular audiences anymore. You know, a couple of them have said, you got to go back to what you were doing, or we can't bring you back in here.
So does that kind of mean that, you know, before your comeback, I don't want to call it a comeback because you retired for your kid, not really because you were retiring, but, you know, does that mean if you didn't do a lot of it, what was the other actual content that you were doing then? I mean, what was the acceptable content that they're like, hey, this is too far, that you were doing that they just love?
Well, it's funny because I've told a few friends, I'm like, hey, you need to quit for a year or two, or you need to throw away all your material, and it's scary, and start over, because I feel like I feel like I would still be doing some of the same stuff, like even if it's way old and outdated. And I remember those guys when I was first starting out, and there'd be these, you know, one-nighter headliners, you know, these guys have been doing comedy 20 years, and their comedy's still like, what's with Reagan? And you're like, dude, it's 2003. What are you talking about, Ronald Reagan? Like, but they still kill with it on these one-nighters, you know, through Montana and wherever else, the South, and they're cruising around doing one-nighters at bars, and they're getting a couple $100 a night, and, you know, and that's their job. They drive from city to city and do comedy in bars, and they're still doing this old hacky material. Oh, my wife's got pillows I can't use and towels I can't wipe my hands on, and doing all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, wow, this was funny in 1976. It's not funny anymore. But they're still doing it, and I look back and I go, man, would I still be finding a way to justify, you know, my jokes about, you know, I used to talk a lot about pop culture stuff like TV. You know, I talked a lot about my family, so I would talk about my dad, that's universal. I can do that forever. You know, like I always talk about how my dad was a drunk and a redneck and a whatever, and I can do that stuff, and it's still going to be funny. I could do that at 80, and it would still be funny. Oh man, when I was growing up, my dad used to do this, and he'd come home drunk, and he'd do this. Everyone relates to that, and it's funny. But I did a whole bunch of stuff about like bad TV. You know, I can do impressions and things like that. So I always had this little different bits of TV throughout the years. So it's like, oh, in the 60s, how about these shows? And then in the 70s, there were these shows. And then in the 80s, there were these shows. You know, and then it'd be like, and now in the 90s, we've got these shows. So I'm like, would I still be doing that? And been going, remember in the 90s when 90210 was on? Like, I don't know if I would still be doing that.
you would have to update it. What's the new 90210 that is nowadays? I don't even know anymore. I guess I don't watch enough
I don't
TV.
know. It would be like, you know, I don't know. My daughter watches all those, you know, what's up with iCarly?
There you go.
That, you know, I don't know.
You could be like, Fuller House made a comeback. You know, I mean, who would have thought?
Yeah. But, you know, it's like, and there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with the guy who wants to do, you know, my wife is different than me, you know, or whatever. If that's what you want to do, that's cool. And I'm not, you know, or your airplane humor or whatever it is, like that's fine, you know. People do that, but it's like, I'm so glad that I'm no longer doing that material. And you know, the new special that I'm doing, like the first one I did, I'd only been doing comedy again for like a year and a half, and I decided to do this thing, and it wasn't originally a special. It was just going to be taped audio, and it was going to be live on Sirius XM because it was the end of the world, and it was this whole gimmick of the world's going to end, and if the world doesn't end, we're going to go live at midnight or at 12:01, and Ian Harris is going to do live from the apocalypse, and it was the December 21st, 2012, the Mayan apocalypse, and I had this whole hour set written out about, you know, it was all religion based, and it started out with, "Hey, the world didn't end. Who would have guessed?" Oops, sorry about the language.
Oh, you can swear it. I hit the little explicit tag. It's like whatever, fuck it, you know.
Okay, cool. But that ended up turning into, you know, a friend who was a producer going, "Hey, you know, why don't I bring my cameras in, and why don't we shoot this and see if we can sell it?" And then, you know, and then somebody going, "Hey, you know, we'll distribute it for you." And then, you know, me meeting Emery, who's a big atheist and had directed a couple comedy specials, and he used to be a comedian. I kind of knew him from back in the day, and he's like, "Well, yeah, I'll direct it." And ended up turning it into a comedy special. And I think that one is like, I love the material, but I look at it and I go, very wordy. It's a little TED talky, like, you know, some people might go, "Oh, there's a lot of setup for that punchline," and it's kind of technical, and you know, it's very harsh on religion, and it's 71 minutes, and like 45 of it is me just completely destroying people's beliefs and kind of being, you know, I mean, I don't think I'm being an asshole about it, but I could see how you would think that. And as much as I love that special, and as much as my wife's like, "Wow, that's your best writing ever," at the end of the day, I look at the reviews. Every review is 1 star or 5 stars. People are either like, "Wow, this guy's great. I've never seen comedy like this," or people going, "This guy should die. Let's get a lynch mob together." Like,
hey, this is Keith.
And this is Jen, and we're from Not Another Atheist Podcast.
You're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Join the revolution.
If you'd like to join the ranks of Patreons and sponsor the show, head over to patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics. For less than a 20-ounce soda or an energy drink each week, you can help sponsor us, the hosts, and our charity of choice. Patreon helps Cellar Door Skeptics create better content, become better activists, and it's going to help you stay healthier by drinking 1 less soda or 1 less energy drink each week. Click the link in the notes of the show to sponsor us today, because we bring the discussion with the sources.
Hey, my name is Wesley. I'm from the Atheist Nomads podcast. Kick back a while and listen to my friends on the Cellar Door Skeptics.
Now, back to the show.
Let's get a lynch mob together. Like,
Hey, that's fair. Because I have Prime, you know, and so it was just kind of one of those things last weekend. You know, I was going through it, and then all of a sudden, you know, I was searching for your name online, and it came up that you had, you know, you're part of Prime for your first special.
right.
And then so I was like, oh, that's cool, you know, click, turn it on, and I start reading the reviews. I'm like, holy crap. Either they love you or they hate you. There was like 3 or 4 reviews with 3-star ratings, and then there was a bunch of 5 and 4, and then a bunch of 1s. You were just like, who did somebody pay these people to come on just because you're like an atheist community? That's like the first thing I thought of. Is it just because you're an atheist?
Well, and the funny thing is, actually, a couple of the ones were atheists who were like, "I thought of this same premise before," okay, dude. Like, you know, I mean, just like weird stuff, or people going. One guy was like, I love everything he has to say, but I don't find him particularly funny, or whatever. And one person was like, I think he's funny, but he talks too loud. And then another guy said, he's really funny, but his suit doesn't fit him properly. 1 star.
What?
Like, I'm not kidding you. And then one person said, I love everything he has to say. He's really great, except for he's obviously a shill to Big Pharma because of his cancer thing. So even though I agree with 70 or 65 minutes of, I'm paraphrasing of course, but he's like, I agree with 65 minutes of this special. The 5 minutes that was about you know, the cure for cancer not being real means that he's a shill for Big Pharma, therefore 1 star. Like, I mean, that's an actual review. Like, the guy says, I loved everything, but this one thing, he must be a shill, 1 star.
You just almost want to be like, do you think pot cures cancer? And they're like, oh, yeah. You too? You live in California? You're like, no. No. I think you should smoke pot because you like to smoke pot, but it doesn't cure cancer. Come on. You know?
Well, and the other one is, you know, and you know how, like, sometimes you say, this is the thing, we've lost all nuance nowadays. You know, sometimes you do something back 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago that you wouldn't do now. I mean, you know, there are things that people have said the comedians have said to push the envelope that later on they're like, you know what, I probably wouldn't do that now, or I won't do that joke anymore because society has changed. Or, hey, I was ignorant at the time and I didn't know I didn't think what I was saying, you know, I didn't realize what I was saying was affecting people. One person did the same thing. They said they loved my act. I swear to you, they loved my act. And I think it was an Amazon Prime one, raved about how good it was, but gave me 1 star because in my bit, I say in one bit that I say, and the funny thing is it's not even in the way it was written. It was just something how it just came out, like the way I talk. And again, I wouldn't say this now, but I referred to Josh Groban's music as, I think I called it faggy music or something like that. And he goes, but he said the word faggy, therefore 1 star, you should know better. And I'm like, well, okay, maybe I should, but you're reviewing this 5 years later. Like, and it was like, it was meant to be obviously like a, you know, I'm obviously not homophobic in any way, in any stretch. I mean, if you know anything about me, if you read anything about me, and not even close to, you can even possibly call me homophobic. The joke is, it was just meant to be one of those, like, goofy, I don't know even how to say it. It was goofy. It was just like a goofy way of saying it. And I thought that was, again, at the time, I thought, oh, that's kind of a funny, kind of not shocking, but kind of way to make people go, oh, okay, I get what he's saying. You know what I mean? And again, if I said that now, I wouldn't word it that way. But really, 1 star because of the one word? Like, to me, that's just, wow, like, weird. You know what I mean? You could be mad at me for saying that. I mean, that's cool. I actually had a gay couple friend that was at the live taping, and afterward they're like, really, dude? Did you really say? Yeah. I'm like, I don't know, did I? They're like, yeah, you did. I was like, sorry. But that was it. They don't hate me. You know, they're like, hey, dude, why'd you say that? I'm like, I don't know. It came out.
Yeah, you know, if you learn from your mistake, right? It is what it is. I mean, it's not like you were on stage, you know, killing Christians or killing gay people. I mean, you right. Said a word that, yeah, okay. And you got to think, if it was 2011, if you taped it in 2010 or whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's kind of like a lot of people, I used to say retarded, you know?
Right.
And my wife has, you know, since corrected me, and I'll be honest, I very rarely say it. I won't lie and say that I might slip up. But, right. You know, should you crucify me for one word? If I'm willing to apologize for it, I mean, I'm not going to make an excuse and be like, well, I should be able to say that, you know, blah, 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 blah. But, you know, if I say, yep, it was a mistake, I'm very sorry, thank you for pointing that out, it helps me learn. So what? Let's move on. But yeah, the 1 star thing just seems, it just seems petty, you know? But I mean, I don't know, it's kind of like Dave Chappelle, right? Used to watch Dave Chappelle all the time. Loved Dave Chappelle growing up. Thought he was a great comedian. He has all these Netflix specials. I can't stand 50% of the stuff he talks about. I mean, and he ruins it because he's going back to, you know, and doing some of the stuff he did, you know, way back when. And he has some very homophobic things, you know, and transphobic things in his new material. And you're just kind of like, now I could say, hey, you did this year, man. Like, are you going to ever learn, right. You know, you're obviously not changing with the times. So.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of disagree with on Chappelle in the sense that I get what you're saying, and I feel you. I think that I mean, and everybody has their opinion, and that's my thing. Like, if you don't like, if you're like, hey, I don't think Dave Chappelle's stuff is as funny as it used to be. That's why I don't like it. But I didn't find, and I'm pretty sensitive about that sort of stuff. But I didn't find his stuff to be like the people got crazy about the stuff that he said that was transphobic. I didn't find it as bad as what people think. I didn't find it transphobic. I found it to be him actually saying. And also I know Dave, so I kind of know how he thinks, and I know what he's about, is I found him, that was his way of supporting. And I know people go, oh, no, really? He was saying, I don't understand it. Maybe you can explain it to me. But this is it. This is what I see. Am I wrong? And yeah, maybe you are wrong. But he's the kind of guy that if you say, yeah, you're wrong, he'll be like, all right, well, I'm just asking the questions. And the thing is that I'm cool with that. Like, if you don't like that, you don't want to watch it, that's cool. But, it's like you also don't have to, you don't have to watch anybody. You don't have to watch Daniel Tosh, or whoever. And that's the great thing about comedy, is that not all comedy is for everybody. And it's funny, I had this conversation. I was on, I've been on a few podcasts, and I actually have a couple friends who are trans comedians, and we talked about Chappelle, about this exact same thing. And it's funny because it's split right down the middle. Some of them are like, oh, it's so trans. And other ones are like, I didn't find it. I thought he was being supportive. I get what he was saying. He's just kind of archaic in his words and is trying to play kind of the dumb guy. And I don't know. It's a tough call, but the thing is, if you don't like it, you can not watch it, or you can, but to go on and like, give somebody 1 star or go out of your way for like a line they said, it's so weird and, like you said, petty to me. It's like, I mean, there's lots of comedians and there's lots of music I don't like. I just don't listen to it.
Yeah.
I don't support it. I don't give them money. And if somebody asks me, I'll be vocal about it, but I don't go on their YouTube page and go, you should die.
Yeah.
Whatever, like,
well, and I would agree with you on the you should die thing. I mean, that's a ridiculous. I don't wish Dave Chappelle death. I don't wish him actually not to even have a career either. You're right. I don't support him anymore. I won't watch any of his stuff. I didn't go take all my old stuff and throw it away, because all of a sudden it's like, oh, right. I think he's a transphobe now. I did go back and watch some of his older stuff, and it's like, it's not. Some of it's like extremely hilarious, and then other parts of it, it's not. But the funny thing is back in the day, a lot of people criticized Chappelle because they thought he was anti-white. And he's not. In my opinion, he's not. He doesn't do a lot of that. But a lot of people were like really against it. Now he comes out and says something that offends. I find some of what he said offensive. But
right.
Would I go out and make a career out of disarming him? Right? Should I become an armchair activist to the point where I want to disarm him? No, because I don't know how much harm. Can I support him if somebody asks my opinion? Could I have a podcast? Can I do a podcast where I discuss it? Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. And if that sparks national outrage, if people, I don't have that many listeners, but if I did, let's say, and it sparked national outrage, right. Is that wrong of me to do that? No, it's just my opinion. I'm just voicing my thoughts. And
and to me that's also great. I mean, you have the discussion about it too. I mean. I think that's kind of the point too. Is that's kind of what comedians are supposed to do anyway. I mean, in my opinion. Now, some comedians would argue that the only job is to be funny, and I think that that's the majority of our job. But it's also the job is to act kind of as the society's line in the sand of what we find acceptable and not acceptable. And if there aren't people. Who is it? Daniel Tosh. Who again, I'm not a huge fan of Daniel Tosh, but he's had a lot of controversy over the last 5-10 years about jokes he's done, and one of the things he actually says in one of his specials is he gets a big groan and like a boo, and he goes, hey, sometimes I cross my own line. He goes, that's how I know where it is.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, yes, sometimes you cross the line, and sometimes you go, and that sparks the conversation, and then we know where that line is, and we know, we can have a discussion about it, and maybe you change my opinion. Maybe you say, hey, this wasn't cool and here's why, and I go, oh yeah, you know what, maybe I should rewrite that joke, or maybe I should change that joke, or maybe I should get rid of that joke. Or I go, well, here's what I'm trying to say by that joke. Maybe you misunderstood what I meant, and I meant this. And oh, okay, cool. You need to be more clear in what you're saying, so that people don't misconstrue your meaning. Which is, I think, with like some of the stuff Chappelle's doing, I think some of it lies in there, where it's like I think some people are misconstruing what he means because his words aren't, he doesn't, his words.
He's not articulating it clear enough.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely part of it. It's funny. I had a joke in my first in Critical Unthinking, not like it was a controversial joke at all, but it was a joke about I talk a lot about Christianity and stuff, and then I said I do a joke about Islam, and it's a really easy joke. It's not like a brilliant joke, although it's been stolen many times since. But the joke is just about how I'm trying to learn more about Islam. I know nothing about it. Which isn't true. I'm playing the dumb guy, which happens a lot in comedy. You kind of play like this ignorant thing so that you can point out why you're stupid, and then in reality what you're doing is pointing out the people who think like that, how they are stupid, but you're putting it on yourself, like, I don't get it. What's going on here, And the joke is, I don't understand anything about Islam. I said, the only thing I know about Islam is what my dumb friends tell me, and that's that if you die, you get 72 virgins, and then the joke is I go, well, what, but they don't tell me what kind of virgins. I go, as far as I know, they go, I don't know that it's 72 hot 19-year-old girls. For all I know, it could be 72 socially awkward 40-year-old men. And then the joke is me going to heaven and them going, hey, you want to play World of Warcraft? I'm your first virgin or whatever. And I'm like, great, whatever. That's the basis of the joke. And it has nothing to do with, and in fact, I used to purposely say 70 virgins, not 72. Because I wanted the joke to be that I'm so ignorant to it that I don't even know the right number. Okay, that was part of the joke. Like, you get 70 virgins or something like that. Anybody heard about this thing? Like, that's what the joke was, You have no idea how many times Muslims have come up to me, or ex-Muslims in the atheist world, and go, well, I just want to let you know it's actually 72 virgins. Or someone goes, well, it's not really virgins. It's huri, which is a word for young woman, and it does explicitly state that they're fair-skinned, and we do know that they're. It's like, okay, thank you. I don't know what to tell you. It's a joke, and the character in the joke didn't understand it. That's the point of the joke. Like,
see,
it just. But what do I do? Are you with you? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess and I don't want to spend all night on Dave Chappelle personally. For me, the difference kind of is how you would push, how you propose that type of a joke, right? And maybe some of it is less to do, maybe it's my own bias here, right? I do have a slight bias. I'm not pro anti-Muslim. I'm not one of those, extremely far people that says, well, we have to give all Muslim beliefs a chance. But I'm not on the opposite side where I think that we should completely tear their religion apart at all costs.
Right.
I'm more of that. I'm more of in the middle on that. Where for me the Dave Chappelle thing was like really bad was, he misgendered, and for me that's a problem. He used slurs, which again that's one of those borderline things, right? How many people have said words they probably shouldn't say, in a comedy bit, and where's that line, right? When do you cross that line?
Right.
But for me, the biggest thing was he had a joke about, a woman tricking a man into having sex and how it was this awful thing. And it's like, first off, that's not a real thing. That's just, that's an illogical trope that almost never happens. I won't say it never happens because that would be an absolutist statement, and I don't typically like to do those, But that was, for me, that was kind of when you just go, okay, hey, dude, maybe do a little bit of research before you do the joke. I don't have a problem with you doing trans jokes, but why don't you do something that is a little bit more educated? Why don't you reach out to maybe the transgender community and say, hey, these are my joke lineups. Do you feel that? And maybe I'm not a comedian, right? So maybe that's weird or out of place. And you could tell me that because you're a comedian. I'm not. So
well, again, I think there's definitely ignorance here on his part for sure. But I think part of it too was him saying like, because he said multiple. I don't remember the exact joke, but I remember he saying multiple times, like, hey, I don't have any problem with anybody doing anything. And I really think he's genuine. Like, but he kept saying, I don't understand it. And I think that's fair. I think that's fair to say, I don't understand it. Here's my understanding of it. From my understanding of it, that's weird. Now, his understanding of it, we may see as wrong, and it probably is, but it's his understanding of it, and that's where the joke comes from. And a lot of people have that misunderstanding, and that doesn't make it right for him to do those jokes. But at least he acknowledges, in my opinion, at least he's acknowledging, I don't get it, and this is why I don't get it. Whereas, if it was somebody like, if it was like Larry the Cable Guy or something, they'd be like, these dang, man boys with their man, whatever. They would just go off on some ridiculous thing that is completely wrong, and the crowd would be cheering it up and going, get him out of the bathroom, or whatever the deal is. and I think there's definitely a difference there. But the other thing is, I live in Los Angeles, and I see there are different. There's quite a different. Maybe, and I don't know, but maybe Dave Chappelle's experience with transgender people are like they're in here in LA. There are a lot of, been for a long time, transgendered people, and also what people get confused are transvestites. There are tons and tons of like hookers and street people that in Los Angeles that are maybe even transsexual, but some are like transvestites that are the guys that dress up and they're hookers or whatever their thing is. That's all over down here. You can drive down Hollywood Boulevard any given day and you see them, and they'll solicit you and whatever. So maybe his experience, maybe he thinks that's what I have no idea, but maybe he doesn't know that that it's how prevalent and the actual other the other side of that. He may think that that's what people are talking about. I don't know. I really don't know, but I know that if you had brought up this subject 10 years ago, that's what anybody would have. Most people would have been. Oh, you mean those? You mean the guys dressed up like girls that you see on Hollywood Boulevard? Like those guys? Like those girls? Like those people? Like a lot of people wouldn't know, and he may be completely ignorant and think that that's what people are talking about, or have some kind of weird fuzzy line. I'm not saying it's right. It's like I don't know what his perspective is on this, and I think I do think he's trying to understand, and I think he understands a little bit more than he lets on to, but I don't think he has quite a full understanding of the trans community, and I don't even think, quite honest, it's so new as a social a social construct that I don't even think as a community any of us totally know. There's a disagreement. I have quite a few trans friends, and they have different ways that they want to be. I have one that if you wants to be her, and I am she, I am her, and I have another one, a friend that wants to be called they, and doesn't want to be her, wants to be they. Call me they. That's the pronoun you use for me is they. So I'm like, you guys don't even agree. Like my two of my friends don't even agree. So I'm constantly, what do I call you? Okay, cool. I just want to make sure I don't misgender you. I don't call you the wrong thing.
There you go. And see,
but if I do, I'm sorry, but what do I do about that? Like, I don't know what's in your brain. I don't know what you want to be called unless you tell me.
Yep. And the advice that I've been given in the past, and there's a key here in my opinion. And again, like I said, we don't want to make the whole show about Dave because in the long run,
for sure.
In the long run, I guess for me, it's more just kind of a metaphor. You're right. Maybe he's had bad experiences. Maybe he's not had a lot of experiences. He did hold himself up for a while. You got to think he's an extremely famous person. Maybe he doesn't think about on a critical side, how do I interact or learn new types of things, right? The key was, as you said, hey, I have to ask. And I'll be honest, again, I'm not transgender. I'm not non-binary. That's not me. I don't identify that way. But the conversations I've had, that's the big thing is you ask. If you do misgender, you make the apology. You say, hey, okay, and you move on. You don't make it a big thing. And a lot of times, like Trav Ramon, I don't know if you know who he is, but he has a podcast called Bi Skeptically. And then he has another podcast I can't remember the name of off the top of my head. But anyway, we had him on the show, or them on the show, and I misgendered them on accident right on the show. And it's like, hey, and then we had a whole great conversation about it, for about 10 minutes. And then after that, it was, hey, thanks, just try not to do it again, And as long as it's not a malice thing, I think that's where the big thing comes in. Your point is, hey, I don't think Dave Chappelle's being malice. Fair enough, right? You're probably right. I would almost grant that he's not being malice about any of his things, and he's not creating anti or transphobic thing. And I think that's a big line that a lot of people are having, especially when we have the orange Cheeto monster in office. And there's a lot of lines that, people are now saying, how close can we come to anarchy? Because at some point, that's almost what it feels like we need to fix the situation. And I think sometimes these conversations get caught up. And it's like you were saying earlier, let's have a conversation about it. Maybe you'll change your mind, maybe you won't, but we'll both be more educated for it as long as we have a conversation.
Hello, I'm Miss B. Haven.
I'm Demanda Wright.
And we're
promoting secular feminism. And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Considering how you want to help Cellar Door Skeptics, head over to iTunes or your favorite podcast app and give us a rating, because every rating helps push us in front of new listeners. And since our main goal here at Cellar Door Skeptics is to provide the most accurate information possible, we hope that more ratings will mean that more people get to hear the topics that we're presenting. We don't insist that we get a 5-star rating, but Hannah's favorite number is 5, and the more gold stars he gets, the more special he's gonna feel. So what do you say? Head on over to iTunes or Google Play, give us a rating, and help engage with Cellar Door Skeptics today.
This is Trav Mamone, host of the By Any Means podcast, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics. Prepare for the revolution. We have cookies.
Now, back to the show.
Yeah, and understand that that not everyone knows what you're thinking. Not everyone is, knows, is educated or may have they may have talked to somebody who is in a similar situation to you that disagrees with you, which happens all the time. So maybe their education came from somebody who doesn't think the same way as you. And on top of that, I mean, there's nuance. I mean, we've completely seemed like we've lost all sense of nuance in this country, and I see it especially in the the atheist and skeptic community, where it's like, we've got real Nazis and real Trump and Bannon and these actual Nazis marching, and meanwhile every other one of my friends on Twitter and Facebook that disagree on one topic is now calling the other one a Nazi and and all these things, and publicly attacking each other. And it's like, really, you're going to publicly attack somebody who you used to be friends with, or at least friendly with, because they disagree with you on one social issue, and you're going to call them a Nazi or alt-right or whatever, when you know damn well they're liberal and they're with you on 99% of everything else. And you're ignoring the fact that there are actual Nazis out there. You're ignoring the fact that there are actual bad people and terrorists and Christian terrorists and Muslim terrorists and racist white nationalists. And these are the people we need to be fighting. We shouldn't be over here infighting over whether or not, this podcaster used the wrong phrase when interviewing this other podcaster, which I actually know of. And then spend the next 2 months, fighting this fight with somebody who you agree with on 99% of issues. That's the thing that just makes me insane these days, is this this infighting and this loss of nuance. And I feel that that's kind of why we have Trump. It's why 30% of the country is winning, and they're
So I would agree and disagree a little bit. I would disagree that the atheist community is why we have Trump, because of the infighting of the atheist community. I don't think we're that big of a community.
No, not the atheist community. Sorry, misunderstand. Not the atheist community. I'm saying,
okay,
on the left, we are fighting so much on the left, and I'm not conflating atheists with left because I know a lot of right-wing atheists. I'm saying people on the left in general and more progressive people, we are infighting, and I mean, you saw it with the Bernie and the Hillary crowd and this and that, where we're just don't show up to vote or vote for Trump because we don't want Hillary or you know, spend more time bashing Bernie or bashing Hillary or doing this as opposed and not, you know, and causing dissent within people that we should be rallying with. That's what I meant.
So I agree with you in that aspect, I guess, but I don't agree because I don't know if I want to call it as much of an infighting type thing as I want to call it we're actually splitting of ideologies. I think that we have that two-party system has infected a lot of people's thinking. You know, you look at conservatives, and a lot of people have really disparaging things to say about conservatives, right? Not all conservatives are like that. For example, I have a friend who's libertarian. His wife originally thought she was libertarian, but after I guess over the last 2 months, they've been arguing enough that about politics, and not genuine arguing, you know, that she's actually like, yeah, I'm actually pretty liberal. And he's like, no, duh. Like, you know, he's like, I could have told you that 2 years ago, you know, but I still love you. But that's the thing is, you know, he's not a typical conservative. He is libertarian, and I don't agree with the libertarian philosophy on 90% of what they believe. But on the opposite side, I think the Liberal Party and a lot of people that are in the left, I think that was just this big conglomerate. And I think right now what you're seeing is a big split because, you know, okay, for example, people like me, I'm caught in between. Like, I'm in between. Well, technically speaking, on the political spectrum, I'm farther left than Bernie is, in all fairness. But I'm not that guy that's so far left that's going to say, I can't vote for Hillary, even if I disagree with 80% of her things because I know she's going to be better than Trump. And because I know at this current specific time, what else are we going to do? I don't, you know what? If we had somebody that had similar ideologies to Bernie that wasn't Jill Stein, I probably would have voted for that. But at the exact same time, you know, I'm in a majority. I'm a cis white male, for Christ's sake. You know, like, I don't have as much to lose as other people do. You know, I have a friend, and you know, she's transgender, right? And she's black, and she's in a very small minority. She has a lot more to lose with Trump getting in than I do. And
that's my point, though, is that we're by infighting and by, you know, yeah, I agree that the two-party system is an issue, but the problem is that's what we have to deal with right now. And these, you know, I have so many. I was a Bernie supporter. You know, I did 2 shows, fundraisers, and we did, you know, I voted for him in the primary, all that sort of stuff. Everything I could do at the time, campaigned, and all that kind of stuff. As soon as he lost, first off, I don't think there was conspiracy. I know 12 different people that work at the polling stations in California, and talked to all of them, and they're like, we're not throwing votes away. There's no one stopping Hillary or Bernie supporters come from voting. There's no conspiracy here. And they were almost all of them were Bernie supporters, and all of them were left wing, and all of them were, no, there's no conspiracy. I don't believe that he lost the primaries due to a conspiracy. But when he did lose, I said, okay, well, we've got 2 choices now. Bernie's not going to win on the write-in vote, so we have 2 choices. So, you know, if you look at their voting record in the Senate, it's like 3% difference between what she voted for and what he voted for. Is she more corporate than him? Of course. Does she have more ties, and has she done some more shifty things? Of course. Is she even close to as bad for the country as Trump? Not even close. Do we need some kind of balance in there? Absolutely. And to me, it's like you said, the talk about privilege. If you, although it wasn't just cis white males, it was all kinds of people I know that stayed home, or some even went and voted for Trump as like a negative. I'm going to make a statement that we need outsiders, and it's like, if you're so privileged that you're going to vote for this guy or not vote or do whatever because you disagree with Hillary because you read some Breitbart story about the Clinton Foundation and uranium or whatever the deal is. If you're really that over all of the other issues that we have to deal, and you having friends that you know it's going to affect. You have gay friends, you have trans friends, you have friends of color, you have poor friends, you have people that are going to be greatly affected by who is in office, and you go, well, I'm going to make a protest vote. You know what? Screw you. Like, that's how I feel. And I'm just like, we can't sit collectively and say, okay, we do disagree on a few things, but let's look at the greater scheme, the greater issues, the greater good for the greater amount of people. And yeah, I don't care what affects me directly necessarily. I mean, sure I do on some level, but shouldn't I be caring about what affects the country and what affects the majority of the country more and what affects people who need it more? Isn't that what I'm casting my vote for? Isn't that what I'm campaigning for?
Don't you feel though, okay, and maybe this is maybe we agree in an aspect, but doesn't that kind of make you feel at least a little bit proud, like that you do have some other side of the country that, yeah, we can't come together, but this is why. The ones that I don't like, I guess, is the ones that are like, screw you, I'm going to, end your life, or you are a horrible person, I'm going to blackball you from all these other things because you did this. For me, it's the ones that said, hey, I don't agree with you. You and I probably fit in that same category. I voted for Hillary, in fairness. I voted for Bernie first, voted for Hillary second.
Exactly same.
I couldn't do the Jill Stein thing. I can't. We did a whole episode where we analyzed Jill Stein, and I even gave fucking I can swear now, right? Yeah, fucking Gary Johnson, a shot. Like, I watched some of his speeches, I went through some of his research. Outside of I love pot, I can't get into him. Like, that's the only pro I have for that asshole. Like, other than that, I hate every policy he would enable. And I disagree with the success that he's had, that it would turn into this nation into a great success. I actually think he is a greater harm than Trump is, personally, to the nation. But for somebody on the left side, that I have friends that actually aggressively disagree with me because they say, hey, you're not understanding that your bias allows you to do this. We need Jill because we need to destroy the two-party system so we can allow for somebody that's going to come in and help a lot of the more minorities than is, the majority. I can actually respect that. And as long as they don't blackball me and I don't blackball them, I'm okay with that conversation. Let's disagree.
Right. I'm fine with disagreeing, but I would love to say, okay, well, show me how your 0.7% did anything other than get Trump elected. It didn't. Well, first off, Jill Stein is as anti-science as Trump is,
true,
but
yes.
which and is pro-Russia apparently. But but on top of that, like, it's the same thing that they did with Ralph Nader, who had much more impact than Jill Stein or Gary Johnson ever did. And my thought is like, well, even after Ralph Nader, we still have a two-party system. Even after the first Johnson, the Johnson in 1980 that ran as an independent against Reagan, Johnson, right? He got a big what was his name? Anderson. Was it Anderson?
I don't know. Off the top of my head,
anyway, and then you have these people who people say, you got or Ross Perot, who got a ton of the vote. We still have a two-party system. Two-party system isn't going to change at the presidential level because somebody gets 1% of the vote. It's never going to happen. And if it does happen, it's going to happen very slowly at the lower end. It's going to happen when we start getting people from the state legislature up to the state senate to the Senate, to the House, and start building other parties from the ground up in all the different states. It's not just going to be we get an independent in. Even if we got one independent in as a president at some point, it's not going to change the two-party system. It's just too ingrained. We're going to have to change the whole government, tear it down, and restart, which may be what ends up happening that's what Bannon and Trump want. They're trying to create or Bannon was anyway, I believe, trying to create anarchy and trying to tear down the government, but more so that they could install a police state and a dictatorship, I think. But
yeah,
either way,
but
that might be what ends up happening, is that we completely rewrite the Constitution, and let's hope the right people are involved. I mean, the scary thing to me is that I never thought. I mean, I've always thought that a lot of right-wing people are pretty freaking evil and are very self-centered, but I never thought that I would see human beings that are so openly just against anyone that's not rich and anyone that's not white and that's themselves, and being open about it. I mean, when I look at Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell and the people that are in power right now, and I think to myself, they don't even care. They're out there going, yeah, well, it's a money grab. Yeah, we don't care. Yeah, we're taking your money. We don't care. Yeah, we're taking away your health insurance. Yeah, we don't give a shit. Like, and you voted for us. We don't care. You're poor. We don't care. You're black. We don't care. You're like, they don't care, and they tell you they don't care, and they're just psychotic. They're like sociopaths, and we keep voting for them. and to me, that's what's amazing. Like, I mean, even in the days when, when I thought it was bad in the 80s and 90s with Reagan and Bush, and I was like, oh, God, these people are horrible people. Man, they were a million times more empathetic and logical and reasonable than these nuts that we have in power right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
You're right. It's it's crazy. There's and I don't want to take too much more time because I want to respect your time. I think we're already at an hour, but you're
and I was really funny, wasn't I?
you were hilarious.
Nothing remotely as people are going to be like, well, this guy's a comedian or does MMA or he's some sort of weird political pundit. I don't know what the hell. Anyway.
So there was a show called Drawn Together on Comedy Central. And God, I can't even remember how long ago this show was, but I remember watching it, as right after graduating from high school. So God, it's got to have been around 2002 to 2007, let's say, somewhere in that time.
Right.
They had this overlord speaker box head guy that looked like Trump, except for he didn't have the face. He just had the speaker box, and he'd like talk like Trump and acted like Trump. And you just sit there and you thought, man, what the hell is wrong with this world, right? Like, this guy's a character in power. And then Trump gets his own reality show, and you're like, man, what the hell? And then, Simpsons do a joke about how Trump's going to become president, and you just go, that could never happen. I mean, come on, for fuck's sake. Like, we don't live in bizarro world, we just don't. And here it is, 2018, and my kids have to go to a school where they got to learn who 45 is,
Right.
They got to learn about it. And I actually, I have to actually, talk to my daughters. The sad thing is I had my daughter, I have two daughters. I have two boys and two daughters. My two boys are teens, and then I have two daughters. And my one daughter is 9. And she literally asked me, why does a country like Trump over a woman? And like, she goes, why have we never had a woman president? She goes, Dad, I do not understand this. She goes, and again, she's got a little bit of bias because she lives in a house. I podcast. I'm a pretty vocal person. It is not unknown in my house that I have no love for Trump at all. And not just on a political spectrum of I don't like Republicans, like I don't like anything about Trump.
Yeah, he's a horrible human being.
And just
still a horrible TV show.
Exactly. And it's for me, like, and maybe this is one of those realizations you have as a parent, right? Like when I grew up, I never thought I'd have to have this type of conversation with my child. I never thought I had to actually explain to my child why our country would choose a rich, bankrupting businessman over a woman. Yeah. And Hillary's not an awful human, for Christ's sake. Do I agree with her? Do I even politically agree with her that much? No. But we chose somebody that's put how many businesses bankrupt, has raped the government for how much money, is a sexist, a chauvinist, and yet America chose him.
A sexual offender.
A sexual offender. Yeah, 100. Yeah, I'm sure he is. And America chose him over a woman. I almost wanted to go, honey, I think we just need to leave. Like, I don't know what to say anymore.
No, I will be honest. I know that, and this is the kind of thing that I was talking about earlier, like this, the minutia of the nuance, is that I'll probably get hate mail for saying this. I don't think that the majority of that is because of sexism. So I would get my hardcore feminist friends going, "No, you're a man. You don't know what you're talking about. Quit mansplaining everything." And blah blah blah. And it's, of course it's sexism. That's why no one votes for women. No, I don't think. I think there is sexism for sure. I think that there was a good chunk of people that didn't vote for her because she's sexist. I think because they're sexist. But I think those people were probably not going to vote for her because she was a Democrat or a liberal. I think the majority of people who didn't vote for her that are not Republicans like I know a lot of people, the biggest issue here is, again, people don't understand people are not critical thinkers in this country. People don't understand where good, if Trump got one thing right, it's the fake news. Now, I'm not saying his version of fake news is correct, but
I hope
the fact
not.
is
because we knew the end the interview right here.
but fake news is everywhere. I mean, it is everywhere. It's all over the internet. And people believe memes and think memes are scientific studies and they are news. People listen to the stories that these Russian bots wrote, and people listen to natural news, and they listen to Breitbart, and they listen to Fox News, and even liberals will read some story that they, I have so many friends who are like, well, did you see this? And they'll post something where it's like, Hillary kills 90 people. And I'm like, you really are buying into this? Like some InfoWars crap or something? And it's like, yes, they do. I have a friend who, he's a liberal dude, and he's an atheist, and he's really smart. And he won't stop talking about how horrible Hillary is and how many people she kills and how many, he's kind of joking, but he really thinks that she's the worst human being that's ever lived, and that the Clintons are this evil crime family, and he would never vote for her. He didn't vote for Trump, and he thinks Trump's a horrible person, but he just didn't vote because it's like, oh, the Clintons are these horrible people. And that's the biggest thing that affected her, is that everyone believed all these ridiculous stories. And there was so much news and so much propaganda against Hillary that had nothing to do with her being a woman. It had to do with her being this corporate-minded, evil, stormtrooper. That's the perception that and then when she come out, oh, I'm just a grandma in a pantsuit, people will be like, oh, she's hiding something. No matter what she did, it was, oh, there she is. She's really a ninja, and she kills people in their sleep. And that's what I know. I know a huge number of people that didn't vote for her because she's the Illuminati or whatever. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, to me, that's the epidemic in this country, is just people not thinking properly and not knowing where to get their news and not knowing what sources are correct and how to check their sources. And it goes right along with our scientific illiteracy. It goes right along with people not understanding evolution, people not understanding climate change, and people not understanding vaccines, and people not understanding basic scientific, research, because the food babe told them that the dye in their latte is going to give them cancer tomorrow. And they saw it on a meme.
Well, that's kind of, as we wrap up, right? So that kind of reminds me, and we want you to promote your stuff real quick too, but that kind of reminds me of a comment that my 83-year-old grandfather said. He posts on Facebook this. He says, okay, I found global warming in the Bible. Are there any Bible scholars out there who could tell me where it is? Now, if anybody that's listened to the show knows that, my family's ultra religious. So this is nothing new, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting here going, I want to follow this thread, but I can't like it, and I can't comment, because if I comment, they're going to be like, damn it, that atheist, it's going to be this big thing, right? And so I went back to it, and I was like, all right, and I wrote it down in my notebook, and I said, okay, I'm going to come back to this. His answer was Revelation 16:8. So I'm going to read it to you, Ian, and you could tell me, maybe this will become part of your statement. You'd be like, I had a friend that, his grandfather thought global warming is in the Bible, and here it is.
Okay.
He goes, this is Revelation 16:8. The fourth angel poured out his bowl on the sun, and the sun was allowed to scorch people with fire. I don't know how he made the leap from global warming to Revelations. I don't.
And even if he did, so what's the argument, that therefore it's okay?
He just wants to say the Bible predicts things, therefore Jesus is real. That's what his whole goal with that was.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So now if you go to the next verse, right? The next verse is, they were seared by the intense heat, and they were cursed by the name of God, who had controlled all these plagues, and they refused to repent and glorify him. That's a partial dig at me, basically, because I'm probably the only atheist in my family, or the only outspoken. I'm the only open atheist in the family. But There you go. That's the lunacy. That if you want to talk about fake news, I think that it stems. I think the media culture that we have now has escalated that a lot. I 100% agree with you in that aspect. I really do. But I think if we look at it, a lot of the basis for people's critical thinking, and maybe this is, again, a little bias, came from religion, right? And religion doesn't teach good critical thinking, as anybody who's watched your show knows.
Yeah, well, and it not only does it not encourage critical thinking or teach critical thinking, you see those church signs and people say that that it actually destroys faith. The critical thinking, don't do it. It'll ruin your faith. I really think that that's a huge portion. I mean, I think that I don't know which comes first. Is the lack of critical thinking skills what allows people to be so religious, or is the religiosity, the prevalence of religion deteriorates our critical thinking skills, and therefore even when we leave religion we still don't have proper critical thinking skills on other aspects? I don't know which one it is, but they definitely seem to go hand in hand, right? Even the people I know that have shed their religion sometimes get very religious about other things. They're the GMOs or their I don't know, some other their anti-vaccine arguments, or they get religious about some other cause, and it's just as much a religion as religion ever was, even though they claim to be atheists. Yeah. They still haven't learned to think critically and look at proper evidence. They just realize, okay, yeah, this religion is silly, and they're like, but aliens, or whatever.
That's very true. I won't even try and tell you about when I used to be atheist and anti-GMO. We'll just leave that for another conversation. Or you could go back and listen to some of our other shows where I make a confession about things that I'm not so proud of. It took me a little while to break some of that issues I had with understanding life logically. And it was kind of funny, I guess real quick, I went back to college to finish my associate's degree after I came out, and I had to take this business logic class or something like that. And that's where they all this stuff came up, and I got in this big argument with this guy, and then after that, then I had to start doing research, and I was like, oh, I think I was wrong. And so I had to privately message the guy and be like, hey, I'm not going to publicly admit I was wrong, but I'll just let you know you were right, just so you could get personal satisfaction, because that's what I would want.
But what's amazing though is that is the pinnacle, and that is the foundation, I should say, or the pillar. That's what I was looking for of critical thinking and of being able to move past it, being able to admit that you're wrong. It's okay to be wrong. People are so afraid of being wrong and so afraid of saying, hey, I didn't have all the information, or I had the wrong information, or I had misinformation, or whatever it is. Hey, but thank you for giving me new information, because now I'm right again. At least until somebody comes on and changes it. But it's okay to change your opinion. It's a great thing to change your opinion. It's a great thing to be enlightened and to be proven wrong, because what do you care about? Do you want to just have your opinions always be the right opinions, or do you want to have the right opinions? And there's a big difference there. It's do you always want to be right because you want to force your opinion to be the right one, or do you just want to have the right answers? And to me, I just want to have as many right answers as I can possibly have, and if that means I got to shed some of my wrong ones, that's great, because then I'll have the right one again. I don't know why that's so hard for so many people, but it's so hard to let go and say I was wrong. For so many people that they'll hold on to stuff knowing, when they know full well that it's time to move on, they'll still hold on to it.
It's like those people who gave you the 1-star rating. They just got to open up and admit that they had the wrong opinion.
Yeah, right?
There you go. Anyway, tell everybody real quick as we close out where they can find you, a couple of your upcoming events, and how they can support you in all your hilarious endeavors.
Cool. Well, thank you. Yeah, it's you can find my comedy special. My newest one is called Extraordinary, or Extraordinary, depending on how you read it, and the other one's called Critical and Thinking, and they're both available on Amazon and iTunes and Google Play and anywhere where there's VOD. The first one I did is on Amazon Prime, and the new one will eventually be on Amazon Prime. But but they're all available to rent or buy, and so please check out those. And my website is skepticcomedian.com or ianharriscomedian.com, and all my information's on there. I'm going to be, I'm always touring. Like, I know next week, I don't know when this is coming out, but this coming week I'm in Arizona, and then I'm going to be in Nashville and Portland in the spring. So look at my website, ianharriscomedian.com or skepticcomedian.com, and you can find out when and where I'm playing. And hey, if you're a social media person and you're on Facebook or Twitter, my handle is @comedioker. So it's like comedy and mediocre smushed together.
It's one of those great celebrity pairings, right?
Yes, exactly. And so I always forget what they call it. The French word, portmanteau. Is that what it's called when you take two words and put them together?
I don't know. I call it mashup. I don't know. That's what my kids call it.
Right. But yeah, so it's @comedioker. Follow me, and I rant a lot, and a lot of people like my Facebook rants because I rant a lot and get very political, but not always funny. But I start wars on because I don't block anybody. So it's fun if you want to get into crazy arguments with conservatives and atheists and all sorts of people with really. So
everybody
really
listening to this, go to Ian Harris's Facebook page and ensure that you tell him how much you believe GMOs are poisoning the world.
Yes. because Jesus said so.
Because Jesus said so. Awesome. Thank you so much, Ian, for joining us tonight. And you're welcome back on the show anytime you want. And hopefully maybe someday you'll come around Michigan, maybe Indiana, and we can check you out.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Awesome.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker, cellardoorskeptics.com.